Hello. In this video, I'm going to talk about one of the recipes that I'm going to be using for the rest of this year. It's a recipe I put together with some very specific features and functionalities. AROON MACD with a very simple DCA approach. Let's start with the MACD settings. It's not over the top crazy, but there are a few things to be aware of. As you'll notice, I've changed the fast, slow line and the smoothing lines. And I carry it for 7 candles. I want it to line up to the AROON indicator in a way that allows to get a large number of hits, but not too extreme. And AROON itself has also been modified. Again, it's not too extreme, but it's enough to make subtle changes very apparent, appropriate to its operations. Now let's focus on the dollar cost averaging. This is a simple take profit approach with a very simple 1% take profit since I'm using KuCoin. Now I have this metered out specifically for 100 positions, $1 a position. Again, a very specific approach I'm using this for. Okay, now let's talk about what I'm actually looking for. Specifically, I want a high number of trade cycles. This is important. I want this particular recipe to really push high numbers of trades. The second thing that is important is my average position needs to be as low as possible. Same thing with max buys per cycle. I want these to be rapid fire as much as possible with minimal accumulation. That is very critical for what I intend this recipe for. And the reason for that is very simple. I have a list of coins that I will be using this on. And right now the ones in green already have alerts set up. Coins I am watching. These coins are actually being traded in a live market, but not all at the same time. I have $100. That's it. This one recipe is going to trade all of these coins, but only allow one position at a time for right now. Ideally, I'm looking at the possibility of up to 5 different recipes using this approach, where I'll have a list of coins, and that one recipe will trade one at a time based upon my carefully selected criteria. I'm looking to grow the sub-account rather aggressively, but I'm looking to do so in a stable layer. So using a $1 position size for $100 allocated per account. My exposure rate is 1% per position. Since this is an averaging algorithm, I won't be taking losses, and I won't have to worry about recoveries because I have this set to use the entire volume of the coin as it's purchasing. So let's go to some of the more notable coins. And not all coins are good coins. Some coins have low values for trade cycles, but they're well enough that I have an interest in them. Having the impact of this particular process is a low risk, high volume approach. Eventually, I plan on having a way that I can have the account automatically adjusted on 1% of account balance. But for now, it's just a flat 1% or $1 manually calculated for my trading. Now, let's take a look at a few. As you can see, the trade cycles are not meant to be very long either. This approach tries to limit the time in the market extensively. That limit is important because I don't want to be too exposed. This one's actually longer than I want for exposure, but it still recovers into a reasonably decent profit. Now, in testing this along different time frames, let's get this out. For example, let's go to the 5-minute. You can see that overall, the average and the max stay relatively within the framework that I want. That is important for long-term trading. I need this to remain consistent under any and all market changes. So let's go right here, and I'm expressly going to go to the BTC market. As you can see, November to now, this is the hot mess we were in. And it didn't do any trading at all. Let's go to this market. So it hasn't gotten back in the market up until recently. But notice it got in here in September, got out, left all of this mess alone, including this entire drop. $30,000 right here. This whole drop completely avoided. Got in, got out. So even with such limited exposure, it is able to avoid a lot of the market turmoil. And that is exactly what I want. Here it is on the roughly 1 hour time frame. Very limited exposure still, and reasonable amount of trade cycles. But even with this market meltdown, notice it's avoiding it quite generously. That's the important part. Get in, get out. As you can see here, it got in, it got out, and then the market just fell apart again. So this recipe has proven to be very resilient in a lot of respects. Yes, it would be nice to ride some of this up, but at the same time, that's too much risk that this may not even happen, considering the long term shows us in an overall bearish downtrend. And we're still pretty much in a bearish downtrend. Some examples of longer durations, like this one. So it does get in areas that I may not necessarily want to. But nonetheless, it does well in managing the amount of accumulation. That really is the whole focal point of what I want this recipe to do. Stay out of the mess as much as possible, even at insanely high frequencies. It mitigates and minimizes its exposure. Now, I personally either will choose the 15-second or the 1 minute, mostly the 1 minute because I have more exposure to trade cycles for what I am looking for in getting better profitability. But the 15 seconds can't be ignored. Let's look at some real garbage coins. And I'm going to do this on the 1 minute since most people don't really want the risk of a 15-second time frame. This is a comfortable time frame. Here's a coin that is always a hot mess to deal with. And yet, exposure is very limited. Now, I will leave a link to this in the description of the video. But this is definitely one of my top tier recipes for this next year. Very comfortable and very simple. And in the long term, I will be trading all of these coins. As you can see, I have some that don't have very high returns. I'm using this approach to hedge against the market. So high volatility coins that will have high trade frequencies and low volatility coins with lower trade frequencies. But in all cases, look at my max buys. This one really is the highest one out of all of them. BAT is also the high one. So two coins with high positions compared to every other coin on the framework. And SHIB does well with just one single position for this time frame analysis. Not bad. So this is what I consider acceptable. And it will carry me for the rest of the year at least, maybe longer. Okay, I'm not going to go too far into anything else in this because I really don't need to. The level of operations within this recipe, it speaks for itself. It's unusual enough to miss the mess, but it's consistent enough to deliver high frequency trading at a reasonable level with minimal risk. Give the video a like for the YouTube algorithm. Share it if you know somebody that's looking for a good trading approach. Subscribe if you want notification for more videos. Until next time.